My parents took the whole family on a private boat trip, then stopped me right before boarding. Dad snapped, "We're not wasting a seat on you. Go home." I just picked up my bag and walked away. 10 minutes later, the captain stepped off the boat, looked at Dad and said, "There's one problem with this booking." The gangway was 12 feet long, and my father's hand was on my chest before I reached the third plank. I felt the palm before I processed it. Flat, hard, center of the sternum, the kind of hand a man puts on a door he does not want opened. Behind him, the charter boat sat in the slip with its engines idling, a 62-foot sport fishing yacht with a tuna tower and a flybridge, and the name Gulf Current 3 painted across the transom in the same navy blue I had chosen when I bought her 14 months ago. My family was already on the deck. My mother Sybil at the stern rail taking a photograph of the harbor. My sister Phoebe adjusting a life jacket on her 6-year-old while her husband Anders helped the 4-year-old with a juice box. The coolers were loaded, the fishing rods were in the holders. Captain Moss was on the flybridge running the pre-departure checklist with the first mate I had hired in April. Everything was ready. The boat was mine. The company was mine. The captain worked for me. And my father was standing on the gangway with his hand on my chest telling me to leave. "We're not wasting a seat on you. Go home." Harv Oakes said it the way he said everything, with the finality of a man who has spent 61 years mistaking volume for authority. He was wearing a fishing shirt he had bought for the occasion, tags still on the collar, and boat shoes that had never touched a deck. Behind him, Sybil turned from the stern rail and saw us. Her hand came to her mouth. She knew. She had known for a month, and she had said nothing. And now her husband was standing on a gangway with his palm on their son's chest, and her mouth was open and her hand was covering it because the lie she had built was about to come apart on a dock in Destin, Florida, in front of 30 people and a harbor full of boats. "Dad, the booking is under my name. The booking is under your mother's name. She found this charter online, and I am paying for it. And I am not paying $400 a head for a man who unties ropes for tourists to sit at a table with my grandchildren. $400 a head is the group rate. The full charter is $16,500. I know what it costs. Do you know who it costs?" Harv's hand pressed harder. Not a push. A wall. Every family event, you show up smelling like bait and diesel with that piece of wire around your neck like it makes you somebody. He looked at the fishhook pendant hanging against my collarbone. Uncle Ward's pendant. Hand-forged. Leather cord. The only thing I wore every day that had nothing to do with the weather. "You are a deckhand, Brennan. You untie ropes for tourists. Phoebe's kids are on this boat. Anders' family is on this boat. People who built something are on this boat. We are not wasting a seat on you." Anders appeared at the stern rail behind Harv. He did not speak. He stood with his arms crossed and his sunglasses pushed up on his head, and the posture of a man who had married into a family's fiction and decided to live inside it. Phoebe leaned over the rail. "Dad, just let him ride. There's room. There is room for family, not for the help." I looked at my father's hand on my chest. I looked at the boat behind him, Gulf Current 3, the third vessel in a fleet I had built from a dead man's seed money and 4 years of 70-hour weeks. I looked at Moss on the flybridge, who had stopped the pre-departure checklist and was watching through the windscreen with his arms at his sides and his jaw tight. I picked up my bag from the dock. I turned around, and I walked back down the gangway without saying a word. Welcome to Family Secret Tales, where the man they call the help is the one who owns the boat. If you have ever been told to go home from something you built, subscribe now and stay. Because in 10 minutes, the captain is stepping off that boat, and the family that kicked me off the dock is about to find out whose name is on the hull. I walked to my truck in the marina parking lot and sat in the cab with the engine off and the windows down. I had come to the dock that morning for 2 reasons. The first was professional. I walk every charter departure as the owner, check the vessel, clear the captain. The second was stupid and human. I brought a bag, because some part of me believed that when my family saw me standing beside a boat with my name on the registration, they would invite me aboard. I carried that bag from my truck to the gangway, like a man carrying an application to a family he should not have to apply to. The pendant was warm against my chest from the morning sun. Ward's pendant. The hook he had forged from a stainless rod in his shop the year before he died, bent and polished and drilled and strung on a cord he cut from his own deckline. Ward Oakes had been my father's younger brother, a commercial fisherman who ran a 38-foot shrimper out of Destin for 22 years. He was the brother who could fix an engine by sound and read a tide chart by memory and navigate a fog bank without instruments. Harv was the brother who sat behind a desk at a plumbing supply warehouse and told people he managed logistics. Ward and Harv had not spoken for the last 6 of those years because Ward had told Harv at a Thanksgiving dinner in 2013 that a man who sits behind a desk and tells his son he will never amount to anything is a man who is afraid his son already has. Harv never forgave the sentence. Ward never took it back. And when Ward died 5 years ago, a heart attack on the water the way his own father had gone, he left me 2 things, $45,000 in savings and the pendant off his neck. The money became the down payment on my first boat. The pendant became the thing I touched every morning before I started the engines, the way Ward used to touch it before he pulled his nets. 3 years ago, Harv's fishing skiff blew an engine in the pass. He called me, not because he respected my work, but because a marine mechanic quoted him $41,000 and I could get the Yamaha at cost through my charter supplier. I drove to his house on a Sunday morning, pulled the dead engine, installed the new one, ran the break-in protocol, tested the RPMs, and handed him the key. Total cost, $38,000. Parts, labor, fuel. A full day of work I did not bill for, because he was my father, and I still believed, at that point, that a son who replaces his father's engine will eventually be treated like a son. Harv took the key, nodded once, and said, "I'll pay you back when the shop bonus comes through." The bonus came through in December. He bought a new recliner. The $38,000 was never mentioned again. I did not bring it up because I was still the quiet one, the one who built things and waited for the thank you that never arrived. I am not that person anymore. The doc taught me that. I built Gulf Current charters in 4 years. 1 boat became 2. 2 became 3. Total fleet value, $745,000. Last year, we grossed $480,000 across 312 charters. I employed Moss, 2 first mates, a booking coordinator, and a part-time mechanic. The company name was on the dock sign, on the website, on the boats, and in 3 years of tax returns that showed more income than anyone in the Oakes family had ever generated from a single business. My father told his co-workers at the plumbing supply warehouse that his son works on boats. When people asked what that meant, he said, "He's a deckhand, unties ropes, helps tourists fish." He had never visited the marina. He had never seen the boats. He had never typed Gulf Current charters into a search engine, because doing so would have shown him a website with my face on the About page and a fleet of 3 vessels and 847 5-star reviews. And that would have required acknowledging that the son he called to help had built something larger than anything Harv Oakes had built in 61 years. I found out about the booking a week ago. My booking coordinator flagged a reservation that had come through the website, a full-day private charter on Gulf Current 3 for 6 adults and 2 children, booked under the email sibylokes@gmail.com. My mother's email. She had booked my boat on my website, through my system, and paid with a Visa card I recognized because I had helped her set it up. The booking total, $16,500. The special instructions field said, "Family reunion. Surprise for husband. Please do not contact this number." I stared at that booking for 20 minutes. My mother had found my company, recognized my face on the website, booked my best boat, and asked me not to be contacted about it. She had seen everything I had built and decided the correct response was to book it in secret and let my father believe he was boarding a stranger's vessel for a trip his wife had organized. I almost canceled the booking that night. My cursor hovered over the cancellation button on the admin screen while the marina was dark and the boats rocked in their slips and the pendant hung against my chest. But the image of my family on my boat, even if they did not know it was mine, stopped me. I thought, maybe when they see the vessel, when they feel the engines, when Moss runs them through the harbor and past the jetty and into the open Gulf, maybe then they will ask whose boat this is, and maybe for once the answer will matter. That was the thought of a man who still believed his family could be impressed into loving him. It was the wrong thought, and the doc proved it. Moss taught me to read weather on my first season. We were running a half-day charter when a squall line appeared on the radar 40 minutes out. The clients wanted to keep fishing. Moss looked at me across the helm and said 4 words, "Your boat, your call." I called the return. We docked 20 minutes before the squall hit, and the rain came sideways across the harbor, and the clients complained, and Moss looked at me and said, "Every captain who ever lost a boat made the same mistake. They let someone else make the call." I had run the company on that sentence for 4 years. Your boat, your call. And today, at 9:05 on a Saturday morning, I had just walked away from my own boat because my father decided I did not deserve a seat on it. My phone buzzed at 9:14. "Moss, Brennan, your father is asking me to start the engines. What did you tell him?" I told him I work for the owner. He told me the owner's wife booked the charter, and the owner authorized the trip. I asked him to show me the booking confirmation. He could not produce it because the booking was made through our system under your mother's email, and the confirmation went to our business address, which is your business address, because this is your company. "Step off the boat, Moss. You sure? Your boat, your call. That is what you taught me. It is my boat. Step off." "Copy that." Moss hung up. I sat in the truck for 60 seconds. Then I got out, put the bag over my shoulder, and walked back to the dock. Welcome back to Family Secret Tales. If you are the one they dismissed at the gangway, hit subscribe, because I am walking back to that dock right now, and the family that told me to go home is about to learn who owns the home they are standing on. The scene on the dock had changed. Moss was standing on the gangway with his clipboard under his arm, blocking the boarding path. He had turned the engines off. The boat sat in the slip in silence, which on a charter dock is the loudest sound there is, because a charter boat with its engines off at departure time means something has gone wrong. Harv was at the stern rail with his fishing shirt untucked and his face flushed. He had been arguing with Moss for 10 minutes, and Moss had not moved. Sybil was sitting on the dock bench with her phone in her lap, not calling, not texting, just holding it the way a person holds a phone when the call they need to make is to themselves. Phoebe had pulled both kids off the boat and was sitting with them on the dock, the 6-year-old asking why the boat stopped, and the 4-year-old eating a granola bar as if nothing had happened. Anders was pacing near the fuel dock with his hands in his pockets, the posture of a man who had planned to spend the day on someone else's money and was now calculating how much of that money had his name on it. Moss saw me coming and stepped aside. He did not smile. He did not nod. He just moved, the way a first mate moves when the captain arrives and the situation transfers from standby to operational. I walked to the foot of the gangway and stopped. The dock had maybe 15 people on it. A family loading a pontoon boat 3 slips down. 2 marina workers coiling line near the fuel pump. A man in a fishing hat at the bait shop counter with a coffee in both hands. A couple in matching visors who had been waiting for their own charter and were now watching the Oaks family the way people watch a car that has pulled over with smoke coming from the hood. I looked at my father on the stern rail of my boat, the boat I had bought, insured, maintained, named, captained, and built a company around while he told his friends I was a deckhand. I looked at the fishing shirt with the tags on the collar. I looked at the boat shoes that had never touched a deck before today. I looked at the man who had put his hand on my chest and told me to go home from the only home I had ever built for myself. "There's one problem with this booking," I said, loud enough for the doc to hear. The problem is that the boat belongs to the man you just told to go home. Harv's face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, and then something harder. Something that looked like anger but was actually fear, because anger has direction and fear has none. And my father's face had no direction at all. That is not your boat. Gulf Current 3rd. Hull number GC 2023-003. Registered to Gulf Current Charters, LLC. Owner: Brennan Ward Oaks. I named the company after the current and my middle name after the man who taught me to run a boat, Uncle Ward. The brother you stopped speaking to because he told you the truth at Thanksgiving and you never forgave him for it. Sybil, Harv turned to my mother. You said you found this charter online. Sybil looked at the doc. I did find it online. Did you know it was his company? Sybil did not answer. She pressed her phone against her thigh and looked at the water. She knew, I said. The website has my photograph on the About page. She booked it anyway because the price was right and because telling you it was my company would have meant telling you that your son is not a deckhand, and you would not have come. You would rather cancel a $16,000 trip than sit on a boat your son owns. That is not true. Then why is your hand still shaped like a wall? Harv looked at his right hand. It was at his side. But the fingers were still spread the way they had been on my chest 5 minutes ago. He closed it into a fist and put it in his pocket. I stepped onto the dock, and I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. The marina was quiet, and the water was flat, and every word I said next landed on the dock the way a hull lands on a wave, with weight and with nowhere to go but through. Let me tell you what you did and what it is going to cost. You boarded a commercial vessel registered in my name without the owner's authorization. You told the captain to start the engines without the owner's consent. You claimed ownership of a trip you did not book and a boat you did not know belonged to your son. And you told every person in your life that your son is a deckhand who unties ropes for tourists while your son was running a 3-boat charter company that grossed $480,000 last year. Phoebe put the kids down on the dock bench. She was staring at me. Not with the dismissal I was used to, with the face of a woman doing math she had never been asked to do. But the boat is not even the biggest lie in this family. 3 years ago, I replaced the engine on your fishing skiff. 300 horsepower Yamaha 4-stroke. Cost? $38,000 installed. You told me you would pay me back. You did not. You have not made a single payment in 3 years. That is $38,000 my company floated for a man who calls me the help. Harv's jaw tightened. I told you I would get to it. You told me that 36 months ago. My attorney is filing a maritime lien on the skiff Monday morning. That means the boat cannot be sold, transferred, or registered until the debt is paid. Your fishing skiff is now collateral for the engine you never paid for. I turned to Phoebe. 2 years ago, I paid $12,000 for your wedding catering, the full bill. Deposit, service, gratuity, Dad told you he covered it. He did not cover it. I covered it. I have the invoice and the payment confirmation from my business account. You will be receiving a copy this week. Phoebe's mouth opened. Dad, you told me you paid the caterer. Harv did not answer. He was looking at the boat, at the name on the transom, at the letters he had been standing next to for an hour without reading. I turned to Anders. 8 months ago, you brought your truck to my marine mechanic for a transmission rebuild. $8,400. I told him to put it on my account and invoice me later. He did. I paid it. You told Phoebe the warranty covered it. There was no warranty. There was me. The invoice is going to your home address, and the payment is due in 30 days or it goes to collections. Anders uncrossed his arms. His sunglasses came down over his eyes, the reflex of a man who needs to hide while standing in the open. I turned back to Harv. You called me a deckhand. You told people I untie ropes. You told your coworkers I work for someone else. You put your hand on my chest and told me I was not worth a seat on a boat I own, on a trip I paid for, at a company I built with money from the brother you refused to speak to for 6 years because he told you the truth about how you treat your son. I touched the pendant. Ward's hook. The steel was warm from the sun and smooth from 5 years of my hands, and 22 years of his. The deckhand owns 3 boats. The deckhand grossed $480,000 last year. The deckhand paid for your engine, your daughter's wedding, and your son-in-law's truck. The man who unties ropes for tourists tied every financial knot holding this family together. I am untying them now. Harv's body went through it in stages the way a boat goes through a wave. First the legs. His right knee buckled slightly, and he grabbed the gangway rail. Then his hands. They went flat on the rail and pressed, whitening at the knuckles. Then his face. The color drained from under his ears, through his jaw, down his neck into the collar of the fishing shirt with the tags still on. His mouth opened and closed twice without sound. His eyes went to the pendant and then to the boat name, and then to Moss standing on the dock with his arms folded and his clipboard under his arm. And the realization landed on him all at once, the full weight of everything he had said on the gangway 5 minutes ago to the man who owned the gangway. The boat, the company, the engine, in his skiff, and the catering at his daughter's wedding. He sat down on the gangway, not on a chair. On the gangway itself, the aluminum plank between the dock and the boat, and he sat there with his legs hanging over the side and his hands on his knees and his fishing shirt bright against the gray of a man who had just lost every lie he had ever told about his son in front of 15 people in a harbor full of boats. I didn't know, he said, the 2 weakest words in the English language when spoken by a man who chose not to know. You didn't ask. In 4 years, you never asked what I built. You never came to the marina. You never looked at the website. You never typed my company name into a phone. You decided I was a deckhand, and you told everyone that story because it was easier than admitting your son built something bigger than yours, with money from the brother you threw away. Sybil stood up from the bench. Brennan, I should have told him. I should have told him when I saw your face on the website. I booked it because I wanted the family to be on your boat even if they didn't know it was yours. I thought if they just saw how beautiful it was, they would understand. You understood, Mom. You understood, and you still let him put his hand on my chest. Sybil sat back down. Harv reached into his pocket. He pulled out his credit card. A Visa with a silver edge that I recognized because I had co-signed the application 3 years ago when his credit score was too low to qualify. I'll pay for the trip. Right now. Full charter rate. Authorize the departure, Brennan. Let's just go. The charter rate is $16,500. Your card limit is $3,000. I know because I co-signed it. I took the pendant off. I held it up so the hook caught the light. Ward's forge marks were visible on the bend. I let my father see the work his brother had done with his hands, the same hands that had taught me to tie a cleat hitch and read a tide chart and run a boat through a chop that would have kept Harv Oakes on the couch. I put the pendant back on. I did not say another word about the credit card. This is the last boat, the last engine, the last invoice, and the last time I answer a phone call from a man who tells people his son unties ropes. Gulf Current Charters is closed to the Oakes family. Permanently, the lien on your skiff will be filed Monday. The catering invoice goes to Phoebe this week. The truck repair invoice goes to Anders in 30 days. And the cosign on your visa is being withdrawn by my attorney, which means your credit card company will reduce your limit to whatever your own credit score supports, which last time I checked was $800. I turned to Moss. Cancel the charter. Refund the booking to the card on file. Log it as owner cancellation, no penalty. Moss nodded. Copy that. He walked back to the boat. I looked at the dock. 15 people. A family loading a pontoon boat had stopped loading. 2 marina workers had stopped coiling line. A man in a fishing hat standing near the bait shop was holding his coffee with both hands and watching the way people watch when they know they are seeing something they will tell someone about later. Harv sat on the gangway with the tags on his shirt and the credit card in his hand, and the boat behind him with its engines off and its captain walking away. Phoebe sat on the dock bench with both kids, crying silently. her phone in her lap with the wedding catering invoice I had just promised to send. Anders stood at the fuel dock staring at his shoes. Sybil held her phone against her thigh and looked at the water and did not speak. The family that had loaded coolers and fishing rods and juice boxes and life jackets and 2 children onto a boat they did not own for a trip they did not pay for was now sitting on a dock with nothing. No boat, no trip, no story, no deckhand to blame. The coolers sat on the dock, sweating in the morning sun. The fishing rods stood in their holders on a boat that would not move. The juice boxes were warming. The 6-year-old asked Phoebe when the boat was leaving, and Phoebe said, "It's not leaving, baby," and the 6-year-old said, "Why?" And Phoebe did not have an answer that a 6-year-old could understand, because the answer was that her grandfather had kicked the owner off his own boat, and the owner had walked away and taken the company with him. I walked to the parking lot. I got in my truck. I drove to the marina office and sat at my desk and opened the booking system and canceled charter #1147. Owner cancellation, 0 penalty. Refund to original payment method. The system processed it in 4 seconds. $16,500 refunded to my mother's Visa. She would see the credit on her next statement and know that the trip her husband took credit for had been returned by the son he told to go home. The fallout arrived Monday the way a tide arrives, not all at once, but in layers, each one higher than the last, and none of them retreating. My attorney filed the maritime lien on Harv's fishing skiff at 9 a.m. The filing referenced the unpaid engine replacement, the verbal repayment agreement, and 36 months of non-payment. The lien attached to the vessel registration and appeared on the county's public maritime records by noon. The filing was a matter of public record, which meant anyone who searched Harv's name in the county maritime database would see a $38,000 judgment attached to a 22-foot fishing skiff with a Yamaha outboard that his son had installed. Harv could not sell the skiff. He could not transfer the title. He could not register it for the upcoming season. He could not take it to the pass or the Gulf or the jetty, where he told his friends he was a fisherman. A $38,000 debt on a $22,000 boat. The skiff was worth less than the engine inside it, which meant the lien would outlast the vessel, which meant Harv's fishing identity, the one thing he did on the water that made him feel like Ward's brother instead of Ward's shadow, was now a floating receipt for the son he had called to help. The co-sign withdrawal on Harv's Visa processed Tuesday. His credit limit dropped from $3,000 to $800, which was the maximum the card company would extend to a man with a 580 credit score and a $47,000 annual income from a plumbing supply warehouse. The card company sent a letter explaining the reduction, citing the withdrawal of the cosigner and the resulting creditworthiness reassessment. The letter used the phrase insufficient independent credit history, which is a polite way of saying that without his son's name on the application, Harv Oakes did not qualify for the card he had been carrying for 3 years. Harv called me Tuesday evening. I did not answer. He left a voicemail, 44 seconds, mostly breathing, ending with "I didn't mean what I said on the dock. Brennan." I was nervous. The whole family was watching. "I said it wrong. Come to dinner Sunday and we can talk." He did not say "I am sorry." He said "I said it wrong," which is the language of a man who believes the problem was the delivery and not the content. The words arrived 2 days late and $38,000 short, and they did not mention the lien or the invoices or the company or Ward's pendant or any of the things that mattered. They mentioned dinner, as if dinner could rebuild a gangway. Phoebe received the wedding catering invoice Wednesday, $12,000. Itemized appetizer service, main course for 140 guests, bar package, dessert station, service charge, and gratuity. Every line paid by Brennan Oakes at Gulf Current Charters, LLC. She called me in tears. Dad told me he paid this. He told me at the reception. He shook the caterer's hand and said, "Worth every penny." He shook the caterer's hand, and I paid the caterer's bill. 2 different handshakes. Why didn't you tell me? Because a man who pays for his sister's wedding should not have to announce it. The payment should have come with a thank you, not a secret. I waited 2 years for the thank you. It did not come. So the invoice will. Are you going to make me pay $12,000? I am going to make you know who paid it. What you do with that information is your decision. But you will not spend another year believing Dad covered something that I covered while Dad called me the help. She was quiet for a long time. Brennan, I didn't know about the boat. I didn't know about the company. I didn't know about any of it. You knew he called me a deckhand. You heard it at Christmas when he said I played with boats. You heard it at Thanksgiving when he told Uncle Jim I worked for tips. You heard it on the dock Saturday when he put his hand on my chest and told me to go home. You never corrected him. Not once. I should have. You should have. You did not. And now you have an invoice that tells you what silence costs. She hung up. Anders received the truck repair invoice Thursday. $8,400. Due in 30 days. He did not call. He texted once, "This isn't fair. You said the warranty covered it." I texted back, "There was no warranty. I paid your mechanic out of my business account because you were married to my sister, and I thought that meant something." It did. It meant $8,400. 30 days, or it goes to collections. He did not reply. Phoebe called me that evening to say Anders had not spoken to her since the invoice arrived. I told her that was between them. The social damage moved through the marina the way weather moves through a harbor. Moss told no one, because Moss was the kind of man who kept his captain's business in the wheelhouse. But the 15 people on the dock told everyone. By Monday afternoon, the story of Harv Oakes putting his hand on his son's chest and telling him to leave his own boat had reached the bait shop, the fuel dock, the harbor master's office, and the restaurant at the end of the pier. The harbor master, a woman named Chen, who had approved my commercial dock permits for 3 years, stopped by the office Tuesday morning and said, "I heard your father tried to take your boat out without authorization. You want me to flag the vessel registration?" I told her no. The lien on the skiff was enough. A charter captain from the next slip, a man named Griffith, who had competed with me for bookings for 3 years, walked into my office that afternoon and said, "Heard your old man tried to commandeer your vessel. In the Navy, we had a word for that." He shook my hand. First time Griffith had ever shaken my hand. He left without saying the word, but the handshake said it. Harv came to the marina on Wednesday. I know because the dock camera recorded him. He parked in the visitor lot, not the owner lot, because he did not know there was an owner lot, because he had never been here before. He stood in the parking lot for 22 minutes looking at the 3 boats in their slips. Gulf Current I, a 36-foot center console I bought used and rebuilt engine by engine. Gulf Current II, a 44-foot sport fisher I financed after our second profitable season. Gulf Current III, the 62-footer, the flagship. The boat he had stood on Saturday morning while telling me I was not worth a seat. 3 vessels with navy blue lettering, each one registered to his son, each one maintained by his son's crew, each one generating revenue that his son reported on tax returns Harv had never asked to see. He read the sign above the dock office, Gulf Current Charters. He read the smaller text underneath, EST. 2020, Brennan W. Oakes, owner. He stood in front of that sign the way a man stands in front of something he cannot undo. He was there long enough for the camera to cycle through 4 recording intervals. Then he got in his truck and drove away without walking to the dock, without entering the office, without asking anyone what his son had built, because the sign already told him, and the sign was more honest than anything Harv had ever said about me. I almost called him that night. My thumb sat over his contact while I stood on the flybridge of Gulf Current III, watching the sun go down over the harbor. The pendant was against my chest, and the air smelled like salt and diesel, and the boat rocked gently in the slip, and for a moment I could feel Ward standing next to me the way he used to stand, arms folded, watching the water, saying nothing because the water said enough. But the image of Harv's palm on my sternum stopped me. Flat, hard, center of the chest. The hand of a man who had decided his son was not worth a seat on his own vessel. That hand had not been a mistake. It had been a verdict delivered in front of grandchildren and dock workers and a captain who had more respect for me than my father ever showed. The verdict was wrong, and the man who issued it had never once come to the marina to check the evidence. Until Wednesday. And even then, he checked from the parking lot. I almost answered Sybil's call on Friday. She called at 8 p.m., and her voice on the voicemail was thin and rehearsed. Brennan, your father has not slept. The skiff is all he has on the water. He is a proud man, and he made a mistake, and he does not know how to say it. Please call us back. For me. She did not mention the hand on my chest. She did not mention the word deckhand. She did not mention Ward or the pendant or the $38,000 engine or the $12,000 wedding or the $8,400 truck or any of the money that her son had spent on a family that told people he untied ropes. She mentioned the skiff and Harv's sleep and the word please. The voicemail was 41 seconds. None of those seconds contained the word sorry. Harv sat on the trailer hitch of his fishing skiff in his driveway on Saturday morning. The lien notice was taped to the windshield of his truck where the attorney's process server had placed it 2 days earlier. The skiff sat on its trailer with a $38,000 engine gleaming in the sun. The engine his son had installed 3 summers ago on a Sunday while Harv sat inside watching the Dolphins game. The engine that ran perfectly, that started on the first turn, that had taken Harv through the pass and into the Gulf more times than he could count. The engine worked. The boat worked. Everything Brennan had ever built for his father worked. What did not work was the lie, and the lie was the only thing Harv had ever built for his son. He sat with his hands on his knees and the lien notice in his peripheral vision, and the harbor 3 miles away, where 3 boats with his son's name on them were pulling out for morning charters, carrying paying clients, and a captain who called his son's judgment the only judgment that mattered. He thought about the pendant. The fish hook on the leather cord that Ward had worn and that Brennan wore now, the piece of wire he had called it on the gangway. The piece of wire that had started a company worth $745,000 while Harv sat behind a desk and told people his son untied ropes. The pendant was not here. It was at the marina, around the neck of the son who had built everything Harv was now losing. And the distance between this driveway and that dock was 3 miles and $38,000, and every lie Harv had ever told about the man who wore his brother's hook. The tags were still on the fishing shirt. He had not taken them off. He had not worn the shirt since Saturday. It hung in his closet with the tags still attached and the collar still creased from the package. The shirt of a man who had dressed up to ride a boat his son owned and then kicked his son off the gangway before the lines were cast. Tuesday sunrise. The marina. I stood at the helm of Gulf Current the 30 running the pre-departure checklist the way I had run it 312 times before. Fuel, full. Bilge, dry. Electronics, online. Bait wells, loaded. Safety equipment, inspected. The checklist was Moss's invention, 8 items on a laminated card clipped to the dash. And I had never skipped a line because Moss taught me that the checklist is the difference between a captain and a tourist. And I had been a tourist in my own family for 32 years, and I was done with it. Moss was on the deck checking the rigging and the outrigger lines. He moved the way he always moved on a charter morning, steady and unhurried. The hands of a man who had done this work for 30 years on other people's boats and 4 years on mine, and had never once needed to be told what came next. He had not mentioned Saturday. He had not mentioned Harv or the dock or the gangway or any of it. He had come in Monday morning, looked at the booking system, seen the cancellation and said, "We have a 7 Wednesday and a half-day Thursday." That was Moss. The work was the conversation. Everything else was weather. The pendant hung against my collarbone. The morning was flat and warm, and the harbor smelled like salt and fuel, and the stillness that comes before engines start and ropes are cast, and a boat finds its heading. Somewhere across the harbor, Harv's fishing skiff sat on its trailer in his driveway with a lien notice on the windshield and an engine that worked perfectly and a registration that did not. Somewhere in a rented apartment, Phoebe was looking at a $12,000 catering invoice she had believed her father paid. Somewhere in a car dealership parking lot, Anders was explaining to his manager why he needed a paycheck advance to cover an $8,400 repair bill that had no warranty behind it. And somewhere in a plumbing supply warehouse, my father was sitting behind the desk where he managed logistics and told people his son untied ropes. And the sign 3 miles away that said Gulf Current Charters, Brennan W. Oaks, owner was catching the same sunrise that came through his office window. The booking system showed 3 charters for the day. None of them said Oaks. None of them ever would again. Clients at 7? Moss called from the deck. I looked at the water. I looked at the dock where my father had stood with his hand on my chest and his tags on his shirt and his credit card in his pocket and his lies in his mouth. The dock was empty now. The gangway was up. The slip line was coiled and the fenders were stowed and the boat was ready. Because the boat was always ready. Because that is what Ward taught me and what Moss taught me and what the water teaches everyone who listens. You take care of the vessel and the vessel takes care of you. Clients at 7, I said. Moss started the engines. The boat shuddered once and settled into the low diesel hum that Ward had taught me to listen for. The sound that means everything is running and nothing is wrong and the water is waiting. I touched the pendant one more time. The hook was warm. The cord was tight. The boat pulled out into the harbor heading east, loaded with clients who had booked and paid and showed up on time and did not need to be told who owned the vessel they were standing on. Behind me, the sign above the dock office read Gulf Current Charters, and the name on the sign was mine, and nobody was going to put their hand on my chest and tell me otherwise. Not today. Not on my boat. Not ever again. Welcome back to Family Secret Tales. If this story reminded you that the people who call you the help are usually standing on something you built, share it tonight. Hit subscribe, drop a comment, and tell me, have you ever been kicked off your own boat? I will see you in the next one.